At this point, you've probably heard the buzz surrounding Dandadan. Honestly, how could you not? It's one of the biggest anime of the year, and it's not hard to see the hype. This shonen eludes the crutches of its typical tropes. Beyond the description, it's many things at once. A fusion of sci-fi and the supernatural, of action and comedy, of horror and romance. Yet, with all of this quantity, so to speak, it maintains plenty of quality. Along its bright colors, bold editing, pop culture nods, and wild humor, Dandadan also exhibits framing techniques, fit for a film studies course, with its use of subtle visual cues to illustrate a deeper story. A story about two strangers drawn together by otherworldly forces. There's a good chance that you've noticed how framing can tell you more about two characters' relationships than dialogue ever could. You see it a lot in film. In general, a director's choices about what's inside the frame versus what's outside of the frame is a part of the storytelling process. Those decisions are deliberate. They drive forward the interwoven elements of the plot with visual signals. Maybe you're that friend or family member who overanalyzes the framing and composition of a movie. Or maybe you just know someone who treats every movie night like it's a film studies course. Which is not a weird thing, it's totally okay, and in my opinion, it should be encouraged. Far more often than not, it's acknowledging those intentional decisions that enhance the overall viewing experience. And of course, you can even look for this in anime as well. A good example of that is Dandadan, where this cinematic methodology is masterfully utilized to reveal the blossoming connection between Momo and Okarun, allowing the animation on the screen to show more so than tell. But before we dive into this any further, if you enjoy breaking down anime scenes as well as anime video essays like this one here, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. That way you don't miss out on any upcoming videos from me. Now, let's jump into this one. It's one of the most talked about anime of 2024, Dandadan. Starting with episode 1, it's evident that the flashy fight scenes and supernatural chaos are not the extent of Dandadan's DNA. It is in fact about how two characters with seemingly very little in common form a bond that tightens with each visual component of the story. It's the visuals, the use of composition, symmetry, and mirroring that establishes a connection before Momo and Okarun, and maybe even you, the viewers, realize it. With the repeated use of similar compositions spanning across different scenes, the animators create visual continuity, which shows the evolution of Momo and Okarun's relationship through small, parallel gestures. Even before ghosts and aliens enter the chat, it's the two's first encounter, captured through deliberate framing, that opens the starting gates for their evolving partnership. It's often the subtleties that are the most telling in a scene. So it's no wonder that it's not just Dandadan's dialogue that drives the characters' relationships forward. It's how everything within the frame works together. From subtle mirroring and careful use of space to specific placements of objects or characters, the mise-en-scène reflects more about Momo and Okarun's dynamic than words ever could, which is why that fancy French term is so important to the study of cinema. In filmmaking and animation, mise-en-scène refers to everything in the frame, from character positioning to objects filling it. That helps tell the story. It's not just about what we see, but how we see it. It's the visual language, one that shows rather than tells, shaping how we understand characters, their relationships, and the underlying emotions of a scene. It's in the composition and parallels that we witness the evolving bond between Momo and Okarun. After all, that first episode is deliberately titled "That's How Love Starts," you know? And it's for those reasons and others that the first episode can also serve as an apt subject for film analysis. While moping around the school halls following her breakup, Momo spots a defenseless Okarun being tormented by bullies. Without hesitation, Momo sits in front of him, protecting him from further ridicule, as if she's in a Ken Takakura film. Then, after taking a quick glance at his magazine, she leaves. Having returned to sulking in the halls, Okarun interrupts her, assuming she had an interest in what he was reading, the occults and UFOs. I mean UAPs. But as it often plays out, most assumptions end up being wrong. For Momo lashes out, yelling that it's this nerdy stuff that results in him having no friends, including herself. Okarun drops his magazine. With tons of headroom in the frame, he looks so tiny. This framing illustrates the devastating weight of her words. And then she leaves. Or so it appears. She exits the frame, and we are left with this image of a small, defeated Okarun. Until we zoom out to reveal that Momo has stopped in her tracks. It's in this subsequent wide shot of the two that accentuates the distance between them. Momo stands with one foot on the stairs and the other on the same level as Okarun, who stands stiffly on the opposite side. In this scene, the sparse background and the negative space between them makes their distance palpable to the viewer. There's no distractions in the frame. We're left to focus solely on Momo and Okarun, their body language speaking volumes about the unspoken tension between them. This setup is indicative of the series' model use of mise-en-scène. Everything in the frame is deliberate, from the space they occupy to their positions on opposite ends. The empty space between them underscores the differences between the two. We later learn that Momo doesn't believe in aliens, but she believes in ghosts, and he believes the reverse. By placing them on opposite ends of the frame, the animators emphasize the gap, the disconnect. But this distance is eaten up quickly. Momo begins to bridge the gap with a subdued apology, acknowledging her harsh words and softening the space between them. She walks towards Okarun, picks up his magazine, dusts it off, and hands it back. In that moment, she's not only closing the physical distance, she extended an olive branch, offering him the respect and validation he craves. The chasm begins to disappear, both visually and emotionally, as they take their first steps towards understanding one another. Naturally, their diametric oppositions on matters of ghosts and UFOs led to initial challenges of worldview. But as it turns out in Dandadan, both ghosts and aliens exist, as discovered through their harrowing encounters with Turbo Granny and the alien abduction, which I'm not gonna go into any further for obvious reasons. Okay. This supernatural pandemonium, which could have easily driven them apart, only brings them closer together. Amid the aftermath, they share a rare, tender moment, a silent understanding that transcends the strange world they've stumbled into. Yet, the threat of distance lurks. Having inadvertently put Momo in harm's way, trying to prove aliens are real, guilt afflicts Okarun. He never intended for her to face such danger, and his regret prompts him to create distance once again. Preparing for a second battle with Turbo Granny, he tries to protect her by pushing her away, both physically and emotionally. But like the first encounter, Momo refuses to let that distance between them swell in size. Once more, Momo bridges the gap, this time by picking up the clothes he left for her. A practical gesture, yes, but also a symbol of her commitment to stand by him. She offers the clothes back, serving as a silent reminder that they're in this together. The objects within a frame serve as a key purpose, and in this case, it's the clothes in particular that serve as a symbol of protection and connection. By offering them back, Momo isn't just handing him something to wear, she's reaffirming her commitment to stand by his side. In a playful reversal of roles, Okarun insists she wears the clothes, not just out of respect, but as a mark of their evolving partnership. It's a small act that mirrors Momo's earlier apology, indicating their bond has deepened from a simple alliance to one rooted in mutual care and understanding. These repeated compositions serve as visual checkpoints in Momo and Okarun's journey, illustrating how their relationship transforms over this short period of time. The scene in the hallway establishes the initial distance, while the scene following the abduction shows that distance closing. By repeating similar framing in these two scenes, Dandadan reinforces that their bond isn't formed just through dramatic moments, but through small, intentional acts of kindness and understanding. It's a reminder that relationships often grow in a quiet gesture, an apology, a returned magazine, an insistence on wearing your friend's clothes, gestures that convey feelings of care and respect in ways words cannot. As we've been discussing, the framing choices in Dandadan aren't just a matter of aesthetics. It's a storytelling technique that reveals the core of Momo and Okarun's connection, and it's one that's been used throughout the season. These cinematic techniques we have been discussing are woven throughout the episodes that follow, crafting moments that go beyond words to deepen our understanding of the characters and their connection. This may sound like a bunch of mumbo-jumbo from some college film course, especially when you compare it to the more alluring aspects of Dandadan, but all of these factors and visual elements interact to open the door to a dimension of the story that rests beneath what is discernible by a cursory glance alone. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I would love to know your thoughts. What moments or scenes in Dandadan stood out to you? Did you notice any other examples of mirroring or framing that we didn't touch on? Drop a comment below and let's discuss. And if you liked the video and want to be a part of future discussions, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. I'll see you all next time. Bye!